Fog sat heavy on the docks before dawn, blue lights pulsing against the wet side of Pier 9. A wool coat moved up the ramp, slow, past a traffic cone wedged in the open warehouse door. Somewhere inside, the sprinklers had already done their work. Something was wrong with the time. Detective Sergeant Leen stood outside the warehouse door, tablet tucked under one arm, phone pressed to her ear. She kept her report short. The sprinklers had tripped at 9:41. The body had been called in at 10:02. She ended the call, flipped her notebook open, and waited for her partner. Nox came up the ramp on foot, wool coat heavy with rain, analog watch catching the cruiser lights. He glanced once at the watch, then up at the sprinkler heads still weeping above the door. He kept his voice low, almost to himself, reading the clock as the only honest witness on the scene. Leen fell into step beside him. Leen walked him through the facts as they moved. The victim was Alder Reese, the warehouse bookkeeper. A head injury at the base of the loading ramp, the whole back half of the building soaked through. Nox listened without interrupting, his left forefinger tapping a slow 3-count against his thumb, the small tick he used to build a timeline in his head. Inside, forensics techs worked in rubber boots on a flooded concrete floor. A ceiling fan squeaked above the ruined paperwork. Nox stopped at the threshold and did something the others had not. He looked up at the sprinkler grid first, tracing the line of heads from records room to back office, and only then let his gaze drop to the body. Close to the body at the base of the ramp, a technician lifted a torn left-hand work glove from the rail with tweezers and dropped it into an evidence bag. The fabric looked like customs-issue gear. Leen murmured the possibility under her breath. Nox repeated the same 3 words back to her flat, testing the sound of them before he decided what they were worth. At the facility manager's desk, a dot matrix printout curled out of the building system. Leen circled one line in red. Sprinkler Zone 3, active at 21:41. The anchor time for every alibi in the case, printed in machine ink. Nox cross-checked his wristwatch against the wall clock, caught a half-second drift, and filed it away. They walked the rear of the warehouse together. Leen pointed out the dock floor, the loading ramp, the back office door, and the records room door standing side by side at the wall. Office and records shared that wall, she noted. Nox did not answer. His eyes stayed on the sprinkler heads hanging above each room. One grid, one zone, one trigger. In the back office, Leen pressed play on Reese's desk phone. A reporter's voice came through tinny and certain. A 9 a.m. meeting the next morning. Invoice copies to be delivered. An editor waiting on the story. Nox wrote nothing down. He watched the blinking message light instead, weighing what someone might do to keep that meeting from happening. Nox circled the desk. The drawer had been pried open, the petty cash envelope gone from its slot, wood splintered around the lock. He stopped at a coffee mug upright on the desk. The wood around it was dark with sprinkler water, yet the ring beneath was dry and warm in tone, the mark of a mug that had been full and hot when the water fell. Next door in the records room, a fan of soot climbed one wall from a single scorched stack of old freight ledgers on a low shelf. No electrical point of origin, just paper. Nox knelt, ran a gloved finger along the char, and read the depth aloud for the technician. It was shallow. The fire had burned only briefly before the sprinklers killed it. Back on the dock floor, Leen sketched a rough layout in her notebook. Office, records room, ramp. She offered the clean reading of it. A fire that tripped the sprinklers. A man who slipped on the ramp running out. Nox repeated only the last piece of her sentence, flat, and tapped his thumb 3 times. The story was tidy. He did not believe it. At the yard office interview room, Dove Keller sat with the utility bar still clipped to his belt. He admitted to taking a 20 from the petty cash envelope twice. He said the forklift camera had him moving pallets all night. Leen slid a yard system printout across the table. Nox watched Keller's hands, not his face, measuring the weight of the utility bar. Customs broker Priya Solon sat across from them with a fresh brace on her right wrist and an urgent care bracelet still in place. She placed her hospital window on record, 8:30 to 10:15. Leen asked about the torn left-hand glove from the ramp. Solon said she had lost one the previous Tuesday and reported it then. Nox's eyes moved from brace to wrist and away. In Margot Finch's glass-walled office above the dock floor, she slid a roastery receipt across the desk, time-stamped 9:22 p.m., and named Old Harrow as her window. On a steel shelf behind her sat a steel-backed clipboard, its lower edge visibly dented, its surface freshly wiped. Nox took the receipt, noted the clipboard, and asked his next question. Hal Oren, the roastery counterman, came in with flour still on his apron. 4 months behind on rent, he said, and Reese had given him the end of the week. He had been closing the counter at the roastery. The regulars would vouch for him. He laid an old Pier 9 side door key on the table between them and pushed it across. Late in the PD hallway, Leen planted herself in front of Nox with the yard log in one hand and the hospital note in the other. Keller was on camera. Solon was on a gurney. Oren was slinging lattes. By her read, that left nobody with the window. Nox repeated her verdict back to her and kept walking. In a cramped consultant office, Nox pinned photographs to a corkboard one by one. The ramp glove, the empty cash slot, the burned ledgers, the clipboard on Finch's shelf, the mug on Reese's desk. He stopped at the mug photograph and did not move for a long time. His left forefinger tapped his thumb once, twice, 3 times. At the Old Harrow roastery near closing, Nox stood at the counter in his coat and asked for soda water. He asked the counter kid about Finch's card that night. The kid shrugged. The card had been there at 9:22. The card, not necessarily the person. Nox's watch ticked audibly in the quiet shop. Fog lay thick on the docks when Nox walked back to Pier 9 on foot. A patrol officer let him in. He went straight for the back office past the cone and the damp evidence markers and stopped again at the desk. Leen arrived a step behind him and asked why they were there. He did not answer her yet. Nox taped the sprinkler printout to the back office wall and wrote the anchor beneath it in marker, 941 sprinklers. Below that, Finch's roastery card at 9:22. Solon at the hospital, 8:30 to 10:15. Keller on the forklift, 9:05 to 10:20. Oren at the counter, 8:45 to 10:05. He stepped back. Everyone was clean at 9:41. Nox leaned over the desk and pointed at the coffee mug. The wood around it was soaked. The ring beneath was dry and warm. The mug had been full and hot when the sprinklers came on. A shallow paper burn next door had not run long. A hot mug meant Reese had been at his desk when it started. Not running from it, Leen's pen stopped moving. Nox walked up to Finch's glass office with Leen a step behind. Through the glass, the dented steel clipboard still sat on the shelf. The roastery receipt still lay on her desk. He kept his voice quiet. If the sprinklers had not caught Reese leaving, they had caught someone staging him. The 9:41 alibi only mattered if Reese had died at 9:41. He had not. In the hallway outside the glass, Leen put it together aloud. Finch had lit the paper fire first, before the blow, to pin the time to the sprinklers. She had been back in Old Harrow by 9:22 because Reese had already been dead by 9. Nox nodded once. Minutes don't lie. People do. Uniformed officers entered Finch's office. Leen read her rights as Finch stood. Slow, the cuffs went on without struggle. Finch looked once at the clipboard on the shelf, once at Nox, and said nothing. Leen bagged the clipboard as evidence. Outside the glass, the docks were turning gray with morning light. Nox checked his watch a final time and walked out on foot into the fog.